Little minds are big dreamers. They are smart, budding achievers. Let them experience the joy of discovering and get their creative spirit soaring. Children are little prodigies, looking to make discoveries. Young World magazine makes them inquisitive and helps them to become more explorative. So much to learn and a lot to ponder. Reading the Hindu in school will make them an all-rounder. Here's a special Sunday magazine for children, where activities and world news grab their attention. Let them see the world in interesting ways and enjoy having productive Sundays. Every child has a hidden talent. Reveal itself at the right moment. Here is a virtual universe of learning and fun, where knowledge and application come together as one. There is something here for every curious little mind in this exciting interactive world that's one of a kind. Always ready and always on the go. Young World Club is a fun place to grow. Experience interesting and interactive educational products for children from the Hindu Group.
Good afternoon to all the esteemed educators joining us today from across the country. My name is Varsha, and on behalf of the Hindu in School, I welcome you all to this webinar. We are absolutely thrilled to see such an overwhelming response to today's session. The sheer number of registrations we received speaks volumes about the dedication and passion you all have for shaping young minds. Thank you for taking the time out from your busy schedule to be with us today. The fact that so many of you have chosen to invest your valuable time in a webinar titled Connecting with Students and Understanding Their Emotions is truly inspiring. It underlines the profound commitment you have to your students, their well-being, and it also highlights the crucial role you play in shaping the future of our nation. You are, after all, the architects of tomorrow. In today's complex world, educators face numerous challenges. And while there are so many critical topics vying for our attention, we felt that this particular topic is of paramount importance, especially in the current educational landscape. To shed some light on why we felt this session is so necessary and to share the vision behind it, I would like to invite Mr. Sridhar Aranala, Vice President, Sales and Distribution, the Hindu Group, to share his thoughts. Sir, you'll just need to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Varsha, and good afternoon, and welcome to all the architects, all the teachers, and all the principals who are there on this call. It's always a privilege to connect with the future creators, in what I call them. It's always a privilege to see and talk to a teacher, because every teacher would actually send out what we all see as the future of our country. So it's always been a pleasure for us to be working with the educational institutions. And Hindu and education has been synonymous for many, many years. And Hindu in school in particularly, we've been doing almost for the last 10, 12 years, from the time that we have started curating special products to the schools. I think we've been able to touch a lot of children. And thanks to all of you for your constant encouragement and constant feedback on what kind of content will work for the students, etc. Over a period of time, we've been thinking of doing some engagement, and we do a lot of engagement. And today, we are very thankful and grateful that we are present in about 10,000 odd schools across the country, touching over 500,000 kids every day morning with our products. And whenever we do any activation, like a quiz program or something like that, then our painting, quiz, etc., we touch 1 million lives every year. I think these are good numbers. Having seen these numbers, I thought we should also get a little deeper into how we engage with our schools and our teachers and parents and the principals. So as a part of a journey, I thought it will be right on our part to understand what are the challenges that the education system is facing today. And in my interactions with most of the schools and principals and students and teachers, one thing that is glaring today is the what do you call the lack of attention now. The span of attention is becoming a little bit of a challenge. There is information overload across the country, across the world. There's so much that the kids are absorbing before they should absorb. So it is in fact becoming a little bit of a challenge for the teachers in terms of understanding how do they start, because the students are now very different from what they were a decade back, at least that I can say. And I'm sure we have an expert who's going to talk us through that. So when we sent out a survey to all the teachers asking them, what is that you would want us to cover? I think not much to our surprise, but I guess, that's been the beginning of how we wanted to shape up our future contact programs with all the schools. Most of you had asked us to understand how do we manage students' emotions. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do today, and I'm sure we have a great speaker in the form of Madam Aruna, who's going to kind of throw a lot of light on that. There are a lot of asks on effective classroom management. How do I be innovative in my teaching? And all in general, Gen Z in general, right? I think that's the hot topic, and I guess that's the challenge that all of you are facing. So it reflects on how the questions were answered. So our vision is to continuously engage with you. This is one of the program that we are kicking off today. You might find answers to many of your questions today. If you don't, there will be some other sessions that we will do where we will kind of try and deeply engage with the schools and teachers, because ultimately all our objective is to build a great nation, and so that we build a happy nation. Today, I think there is a lot of stress around. And that stress is what hopefully Madam Aruna is going to clear us today through her session. Without further ado, and coming between you and the learning, thank you all again for the overwhelming registrations. One of the things that we always see is people register and they don't come. That's not what we see in the Hindu. We usually see multiples. In fact, I'm very glad when I gone through the registrations. We have almost every state represented today here. I'm glad that we are able to do this, and we will probably play a small role in shaping up the future of the country. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for encouraging the Hindu. Looking forward to working with you all next academic year also. Thank you, Varsha, for having me. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aranala, for that insightful perspective. Your words truly resonate with the core values we hold. It is clear that understanding the emotional needs of our students is not just a desirable quality for educators, but an essential one in today's world. We are incredibly fortunate to have with us today a true expert in the field of education and child development, Ms. Aruna Shankaranarayanan. With 23 years of experience as the founder and director of Prayatna, a center dedicated to children with learning difficulties, Ms. Aruna brings a wealth of practical knowledge and deep understanding of the challenges and triumphs of young leaders. Her current role as visiting faculty at Azim Premji University, where she teaches in the PG Diploma. She has also conducted numerous workshops for teachers nationwide, focusing on crucial areas like learning difficulties, socio-emotional literacy, and motivation. She is also a respected author and a contributor to publications like The Hindu. Let's extend a very warm welcome to Ms. Aruna. We eagerly anticipate her insights. And audience, you may use the Q&A box for your questions on Zoom, and the comments are welcome on YouTube. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Varsha. First, I would like to thank The Hindu for inviting me today to this webinar. The Hindu is very much a part of my morning routine. Just like brushing my teeth and having my cup of tea, if I don't read the Hindu newspaper, the day doesn't feel quite right. So it is a privilege to be here today. And like the organizer said at the beginning, I'm always honored, and I really mean what I say when I'm addressing a group of teachers. Unfortunately, because of the numbers today, this can't be a back and forth interaction, though I normally prefer that format. However, I really request you all to engage deeply with what I am saying, critically with what I'm saying, and type in your comments, questions, suggestions in the chat boxes. Because you truly are doing one of the most important and significant jobs shaping and molding the future citizens of our country. So given that we have limited time, I'm going to plow ahead, and I do hope we get some time where I can respond to your questions at the end of the session. So I will be asking you questions during this course of this webinar. And though you cannot answer in the moment right now, I strongly encourage you to think about how you would answer them, supposing we did have a more interactive format. So have you ever felt lonely? Feeling lonely is not the same as being alone. You can be lonely even when you are with a group of people. You can be lonely within a family. You can be lonely in a workplace. You can be lonely in school when you don't feel you belong, when you don't feel understood for whatever reason. And what is it like when you feel like this? I'm sure you have all felt this emotion at some point or the other. But what is it like to feel like this day after day in a learning environment? Human beings are social creatures. We are all born with a deep need to connect, to feel that we belong, that we are part of a larger group, be it a family, a larger community, a classroom, And no person, and especially in today's highly hyper-connected world, nobody is an island. None of us can make do on our own. And I would just like to dispel this myth regarding introverts, that they don't need people. Introverts are people who prefer to engage with small groups of people. They may not like the large crowds, the big parties, the loud raucous parties, but everybody, including introverts, has a deep need to connect. It's just that introverts and extroverts differ in how they engage with people. Extroverts want to meet lot of people frequently and in general high intensity settings, though introverts prefer smaller, quieter, more intimate connection. And a sense of learning, a sense of belonging, is essential to learning, because unless we feel a sense of psychological safety where it's okay to make mistakes, I'm not going to feel threatened, I'm not going to feel diminished, or I'm not going to feel I'm less of a person in some way if I fail, if I make a mistake. Those are very, very integral to learning, because failure is an essential part of learning. We have a very wrong notion of failure, that failure is something to be avoided. But actually, you cannot learn if you don't know how to fail. And that's something our education system doesn't teach us. In fact, it teaches us to avoid failure, to shy away from it. But we need to remember that mistakes, unless we make mistakes and take risks, we cannot truly push that envelope and learn effectively. And a feeling of connection is one of the three elements of intrinsic motivation, where we have the desire to learn for its own sake. And I'm just not spouting this fact. These have been research studied by people who've done decades of research on motivation. So how do we connect with students in the classroom? What can you do as a teacher to make you have a classroom of 40 students, 60, even there are classrooms with 75 or 80 students? What can you do as a teacher to make sure that every child in that classroom feels that they belong? First, we need to be considerate and courteous to all children. I know we, as a society, we do expect children to be respectful of teachers. But respect, if we need to be respected, we need to show the same respect to children as well. Further, we need to remember that every student, even though they may look the same in that their uniforms, they may be of the same age. But each child behind that uniform is an individual with a unique learning profile, with some idiosyncratic needs. They have different learning profiles, different strengths, interests, weaknesses, varying family backgrounds. So we need to attune to their individuality. What makes this child unique? How is this child different? Next, one way to attune to their individuality is to get to know all students personally. It starts by knowing their names. It also involves getting to know something unique about them. What does this child like to do? What this child is fond of animals. Another child lives in a large joint family. But knowing these individual things about children can make a huge difference. Further, we need to keep emphasizing that it's okay to make mistakes. Just excuse me, I have a bad throat, so I may need to keep sipping water. And we also need to help students connect with each other. Our role as teachers is not just to connect with students, but also to ensure that there is a classroom dynamic that is healthy and safe for all children, where they are able to connect with one another. So we can give them small group activities where they get to know one another a little more deeply. We have to ensure that the quieter ones also get a chance to speak. And we need to encourage a lot of group work where they work in teams. So making a concerted effort to build connection and to foster them to build connections with each other is essential for a healthy and safe classroom atmosphere. The way we talk makes a huge impact. Our words matter. The pronouns we use, the kind of words that we choose to emphasize. So when we say in our class, we work as a team, that gives a message that the teacher is a part of the group, that you don't see yourself as being distinct from them. Also letting them know that if there is any issue, any problem, you may think, yes, I'm so approachable, they'll come up to me. But not every student feels confident and secure enough to do that. So it makes a huge difference to say it explicitly and keep repeating it once in a while, that if you have any issue, don't hesitate, come and talk to me either alone or as a group. We also need to remind children that it's not okay to laugh or poke fun of other children when they make mistakes. And when we set this tone, then we create a culture in the classroom that is accepting, that is tolerant, and that creates a safe space for all children to bring their authentic selves and be themselves in the classroom. Our education system puts a lot of emphasis on knowledge. And this knowledge is often only limited to the cognitive domain, to facts and to things that, and to rational arguments. However, human beings are born to feel. Our feelings are what makes us human. It is what defines our humanity. And we can't get rid of this essential aspect of ourselves when we come to school. Neither can the teacher nor the students. So we need to tune into these feelings, not banish them or act that like they don't exist, but treat them as sources of important information, both for ourselves as individuals, as teachers, and for the students whom we are attempting to shape or mold. So foremost for us as teachers is to connect first with ourselves. How am I feeling? What's happening with me? So we need to be able to figure out our own emotions, be aware of our own emotions before connecting with students. We also need to read our children's feelings. We need to read the mood in the classroom. And this is one of the hardest aspects of teaching, because it's not obvious what somebody is feeling always. Sometimes what they say will be indicative of how they feel. However, when we are feeling stressed, very often we don't necessarily show exactly what we are feeling. So we need to look into a person's facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and a host of other factors that I will tell you today to gauge what an individual child is feeling or what an entire group is feeling. Sometimes the whole class is excited, and we need to figure out what that cause of that excitement is before plowing in with the maths lesson. Because if we don't connect with that feeling and we just start with the math lesson, most of them are not going to connect with what you are saying. So as teachers, we also need to be what is called an emotion scientist. Okay. And I'm going to be sharing with you something called the ruler model. This has been put forth by a psychologist called Mark Brackett, who teaches in the at Yale University in the Department of Psychology. And RULER is an acronym. And I'm going to spell out what each of these words stand for in a lot more detail over the course of the rest of the session today. But we need to remember, when we are talking about emotions, we adults, the parents and teachers, how we emote and how we respond to emotions in others is very impactful, even more so than the words or what we try to teach. Because how we respond, we're actually role modeling. So it's very important that we bring emotional regulation to ourselves first before we try to bring it to our students. So we need to know ourselves, our feelings, and be able to manage them before we try to impart these skills to children. And that is very hard because a teacher has so many responsibilities, and this is not even given as your part of the job, responsibility. You have your curriculum that you have to finish, and all that talk in the school is only about that. But this is equally, if not more important, in fact, more elemental than what you teach. So you've probably heard of the term emotional intelligence. Though it was popularized by Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book by this very same name, the construct was actually put forth by Peter Salovey and John Mayer. And teachers especially are ones who need to be especially emotionally intelligent. Any job requires emotional intelligence. Any job that requires dealing with people, including in the office, whether it's, but teachers especially, because you are working with young, developing minds. It's very essential that you also cultivate and display emotional intelligence. Should teachers factor in emotions while designing a curriculum? You probably know that the answer is an absolute yes. Why do we need to do that? Because emotions are so central to learning. We can create hooks to engage and interest them. Unless we appeal to their emotions, you cannot create that hook. Something they care about, something that is important to them. Only when you do that, then you get their interest. Their ears are perked up and they listen to what you have to say. And goal of education should be to help students discover their passions, what drives them, what motivates them. And passion is ultimately an emotion. What energizes you? What excites you? What would you like to do with your lives? These are questions that we want students to ask, not what marks should I get, or which job pays most, or okay, may not be at the school level, but ultimately is which college I need to get to, because ultimately that it's connected to the job. But those are the wrong questions that we are, our students are asking. We need to help them cultivate intrinsic motivation where they are driven to learn, they're driven to do their job, even if they don't get paid. I know getting paid is important, but that should not be the sole reason why somebody is doing what they do. So feelings affect all aspects of the learning process. Like Mr. Sridhar Aranala said in the beginning today, attention spans are reducing, they're diminishing day on day. And one of the reasons is we need to connect. We need to bring in more of this purpose and meaning into education. Our ability to make decisions is severely impaired when we don't factor in emotions. In fact, studies have been done when, the people who've had some kind of brain damage and the connections between the thinking and the feeling areas of the brain, if they are severed, they are unable to make decisions. Even though rationally they are totally functional, they cannot make even decisions like, should I have coffee or tea to drink? So our ability to make decisions is intimately tied to our emotions. And we all know that the currency of social relationships is emotions. Do people understand me? Do they make me feel good about myself? Those are the people we want to engage with. Those are the people we want to have a relationship with. Even our health, our immunity, our longevity is connected to our emotional health. And likewise, being creative, being effective on the job is determined by the state of your emotions. So it often surprises me when emotional health is such an integral part of our ability to be human, to function. Why don't our schools spend more time working on these skills? Likewise, your teachers, something as simple as your mood affects how you grade. You'd like to think not, but the fact is it does impact. So I also teach, and one aspect of my job that I don't like so much is grading. I actually feel we needn't have grades. But I myself find when I'm plowing through paper after paper, if I don't take a break, I'm starting to give lower grades. So I make a conscious effort that I don't grade more than X number of papers at a stretch, because that fatigue sets in. It's unfair to the student who comes up at, the 20th or the 30th paper that I have to grade. And teachers, they did this experiment where they were asked to, recall some negative experience. And then they were asked to grade papers. And those who had to recall a negative versus a positive experience gave a full grade lower to the students, though the teachers were not consciously aware of that they were grading lower because of their mood. Don't feel bad. It's not just teachers. Even judges in courts are swayed by their mood. And in fact, they say that, just before lunch, they give harsher sentences because they're hungry. So if you have, to schedule your case, try to do it early in the morning or soon after lunch. You have a better chance of getting a better verdict from the judge. So we will revisit this ruler model in little more detail to understand how we can help ourselves be better at emotional regulation and how we can help our students do the same. So before we move on, I just like you to rate yourself on how good you think you are in terms of your emotional management, your emotional intelligence. So I'll just pause for a few seconds here. And I'll just let you read through this. So just give yourself a rating of 1 to 5. You can also think about in which aspects you probably think you could do with some help. And, it would be nice later on if, the Hindu will probably share a recording of this webinar. If you can show this slide to another person who knows you well and see how they rate you as well. Okay, why do we need programs in school that teach socio-emotional learning? Because there's been a lot of research that shows that they are impactful in different scenarios, right from athletes on the sports field, when they are tutored in socio-emotional learning, they do better than a control group. Likewise, business school students and classrooms where they use this ruler model, they find that those children have more sophisticated emotional skills than classrooms where students are not taught these skills explicitly. So let's start with the first R of recognizing emotions. So let's connect with how you are feeling right now in the moment. What bodily sensations do you have? I hope most of you are calm and engaged and feeling relaxed. However, there are so many factors that impact our emotional state right now. Are you hungry? Are you nervous about an upcoming interview that you have? Or do you feel a knot in your stomach just thinking about all the work you have to do after the webinar? Do you feel sweaty in your palms? Is your heart beating fast, or is it at a more measured pace? So attuning to all the physical sensations in your body. What kind of thoughts are racing through my head? Is it one thought after another competing for my attention? Or is it more like a smooth flow? And of course, what is the content and nature of those thoughts? And what emotions am I feeling right now? Am I angry because I just had a fight with my spouse and I locked the door and I'm sitting inside in this webinar room, but you're still fuming, thinking of the things that your spouse said to you? So these are the things, this kind of analysis that we need to do to get in touch with our own emotions. You must also remember that all the emotions differ on two dimensions. So if you take, plot it on a graph with the X and Y axis, energy on one axis and pleasantness on the other, all emotions are either high energy or low energy. They're either pleasant, they make you feel good, they want you to approach, or they're unpleasant, they don't feel good, you want to avoid them. Okay, so this is something called the mood meter, where they plot different emotions on these two dimensions. And they are divided into different quadrants. Excuse me that I could not get a better image. I know it's in Spanish, but I could not find a better graph online. But all you need to know that there are four quadrants, and it's high energy versus low energy, or pleasant versus unpleasant. Okay. And you can take a look at this mood meter. I've given you a link. There are many mood meters available online if you just type in mood meter on Google. But I'll just see if I can quickly show you an image of a mood meter. Yeah, there you go. So if you look at this, see the positive, the yellow is both high energy and high in pleasantness. So when you're feeling excited, feeling ecstatic, from feeling pleasant more towards the middle end. Green would be high on pleasantness, but low on energy. When you're feeling good, but you're not overly excited. So when you're calm, when you're tranquil, serene, okay? The blue emotions would be low energy and low on pleasantness. When you're feeling maybe sad, depressed, dejected. And the red would be high energy, but unpleasant. So that would be things like anger, rage, okay? feeling livid, so on and so forth. So you can use this link and try to look at this in more detail at your leisure. So we'll just go back to the slides. Give me a moment. Yeah. Okay, so it often happens when we misread someone else's emotions. And a lot of the time, many disagreements, arguments, miscommunication happens when we misread someone else's emotions. Okay? And how do we discover our mistake? So you may, a colleague may come in and sit in the staff room and be a little aloof from you. Normally, this colleague is a little friendly and, smiling. But today she seems a bit aloof and doesn't make eye contact with you. And you interpret immediately, oh, she's upset with me. And I don't know what I did to make her upset. And, maybe you think, okay, you didn't return her call, so she's upset with me. That is your immediate interpretation because you didn't have time to return her call. She's like, why should she get upset for that? Later on, you discover that the colleague was stressed because she had a minor scrap while on the way to work. On a two-wheeler, she had a little accident and she's just feeling a little rattled when she walked into school. But you didn't know that. You made your own assumptions. And then you attributed your assumptions into, that is the reality. So we always have to remember that when it comes to emotions, there are sometimes two sides to a story. And our side may not always necessarily be the right one, though it feels right to us because it meshes with our emotion in the moment. Because it's two people interacting, there are multiple emotions at play. And unfortunately, we do seem to be getting worse at reading one another's emotions. And this is especially true of our children. And why is this so? They're saying the younger generation is getting worse at reading emotional cues in people. It's because, and I say this ironically on a Zoom call where we are also interacting behind screens, is now we are spending more time on devices. I know these devices have been a boon and have innumerable benefits. But when children spend all their developing years with their eyes glued to screens and not making eye contact with people and getting emotional feedback for the things that they say, instead they are typing, and then there is no that emotional feedback to them on how that other person is feeling. So we do really need to think about how we use devices, how much we use them, and we need to use them more mindfully because it is blunting our ability to connect with people. It is affecting adults, but it is affecting children even more. So after recognizing our emotion, the next step that comes in terms of their story is we need to understand why we are feeling that emotion. It could be something that happened just before, or it could be something that happened even yesterday or, in the morning, because we do, our emotions linger within us. We are not only responding to what is happening in the moment. And as a lot of mindfulness practitioners, would tell you, it is difficult to engage even in the present moment because so many thoughts and feelings are always competing. Even while I'm talking right now, I'm sure, and you are listening to me, I'm sure other thoughts keep popping into your head every now and then. Oh, did I switch off the gas? Oh, I need to pay the milkman. Or, oh my God, I don't know what I'll do. My mother is ill. How will I cope? So we constantly have these, narratives playing in our head. So we need to learn to understand what triggers certain emotions in ourselves and in others. And especially for ourselves, we need to be honest with ourselves, especially when it comes to negative emotions. Okay, so think of a time when you felt a strong negative emotion. Maybe it was a colleague who got a promotion that you were expecting to get. And then you felt this tinge of envy surge in you. But if you don't recognize it as envy, you may change the narrative by telling yourself, she doesn't deserve it. Actually, when I'm not talking about whether that's true or not, that's a different matter. But unless you tell yourself that, yes, I am feeling envious, and it doesn't make you a bad person if you're feeling envious. These are all natural, normal human emotions. But the problem is when we don't acknowledge it to our own selves, that's when it starts creating problems in relationships. Okay? In classrooms, emotions are a very important form of communication, more than words. About it tells you that something is going on inside that child. Something, especially if it's a strong emotion, a negative emotion, it is something that the child cannot handle. It may not necessarily be in that moment what you are doing. Because, teachers, automatically feel, there's nothing in this room. I have not said anything threatening. Nobody has said anything negative. It could be something that is not in your control, something that happened at home or something that the child is going through. But we need to first connect with that emotion, not deny it. Okay, we need to grant ourselves to feel the entire gamut of emotions. Likewise, children need to also be allowed to feel every kind of emotion. We cannot tell children don't get angry. Anger is also a part of the human condition. uh, you can say it's okay to get angry, but it's not okay to hit when you are angry. Okay, I will talk about that expression later. So, understanding our emotion involves the stories we tell ourselves. And these stories happen automatically for us, because that narrative keeps spinning in our heads. We make appraisals, we make attributions. Why did someone do this? The moment anything happens, we are kind of judging it as either good or bad, pleasant, unpleasant. And sometimes these automatic thoughts and these little narratives that pop up in our heads may not be correct. In fact, they are often incorrect. It's okay that it pops up, but the moment we get attached to whatever pops up as the truth and the only truth, that becomes a problem. We need to recognize that there may be other truths, and this may not be the only way of looking at it. So that is what I mean by perspective taking skills. Looking at the same situation from another perspective can change the emotion. And understanding emotions also involves looking for patterns. There is the child in class who seems to be in a bad mood every day after the break. You see this pattern repeatedly. So there's something about the transition from break to coming into classroom that is creating some turmoil. So looking for patterns like that is also very helpful. So the emotions we feel, they all have a meaning behind them, a reason, okay? And we need to understand why we are feeling that way. And the behavior that we see in children when we're trying to read their emotions is only a clue. And we need to try to see what are they trying to communicate through that behavior. Because very often, especially for children, and especially so for young children, the only way for them to communicate difficult feelings is through their behavior. They don't know any other way to communicate that. So we need to take that behavior, or what we call misbehavior, not if they are doing something to irritate us or to trouble us, but it's their way of showing that I am finding it difficult to cope with the demands being made on me right now. So as teachers, we need to be emotional scientists where we try to gauge the emotions of students non-judgmentally, without necessarily, because that judgment comes automatically to us. I'm not saying, we are bad because we're doing that. It's just that's the way we have been conditioned. But we need to step back, even if those judgments pop up in us, like, oh no, not again, this kid who always gets under my skin. The moment that thought comes up is to tell yourself, wait a minute, and let me try to understand what that child is trying to communicate by that act of defiance. When that child is not complying in the classroom, what is that child trying to communicate? So it always helps for us as teachers to have a wide emotional vocabulary. And that's why I put up that mood meter. There are at least 100 terms on that. So we can use at least 100 different ways to describe how I'm feeling. And it always helps if we can be a little bit more precise, more exact in saying how we feel. Because sometimes when you ask children, how are you feeling? I'm feeling bad. Now, what does bad mean? It could mean a whole host of things. So the child may not have that ability, but our goal as social emotional literacy trainers is to help children also acquire that emotional vocabulary so that they can be more precise in communicating their emotions. So when we use more precise words, the biggest advantage is other people are able to understand us better. Instead of saying bad, if we are saying, I'm feeling irritated that my friend is teasing me, or I'm feeling frustrated because I don't understand fractions, it becomes easier for the teachers to connect. Excuse me. Okay, studies show that children who can label their feelings tend to have better relationships and also do better at school. So it actually is very important for us to teach children the skill of labeling emotions. Likewise, we should model labeling. When we feel, when the teacher is feeling low, it doesn't mean you don't necessarily communicate to that to the students. In fact, it's perfectly fine to come in and say, I've had a very stressful day, and I may not be, very patient right now. So I would request you to do group work. So you're explaining that even you have your bad days or your weak moments, and it's perfectly normal and natural to do that. Okay. So how we differentiate different shades of an emotion. So, how is anxiety different from fear? Anxiety is when you fear something in the future. It's not something that's happening in the present. Fear is when you're scared of a present danger, something that's happening right now in the moment. Pressure is when you feel there is some outcome that depends on how you perform. And stress is when you have too many things going on at the same moment. Now, as teachers, I'm sure you feel all of these four at different points. in a day. But it helps you to differentiate between these types of negative emotions. Okay, moving on to relationships. I'm sure all of you can think of, many relationships that enrich your lives. But those special the 2 or 3 people you are exceptionally close to, what makes these relationships so special? If you think about it, it will be because you are able to connect emotionally. You may be able to even, engage intellectually, but unless you connect emotionally, that bond will not be there. Okay, we also, need to let students know that it's all right to feel all the emotions. There should not be necessarily this pressure to only experience positive emotions. Because I think there is some, misunderstanding as a cultural phenomenon, especially among young adults, where students think they should not feel any negative emotion. And the moment they feel something mildly negative, they think something is amiss. But we need to convey that it's okay to feel negative emotions, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can behave however you want or that you can say whatever you want. We can feel anything, that's perfectly fine. But how we choose to express that feeling is something we need to learn. People who express their emotions to other people generally have better health. They also do better academically and at the workplace. So it's not healthy to bottle up emotions, to suppress them, to deny them. It's healthy to express, to talk it out with others. And in some situations, if you have nobody to talk to, it's also, useful to write down what you're feeling. That is better than keeping it all up bottled inside. Now, as teachers, we also need to do something called emotional labor, which makes the job quite taxing. I know you can come in and say that I'm feeling stressed today, but if you're really, really dejected that day, you can't necessarily show that to your students. Supposing you got some really bad news, of like a parent who's been diagnosed with a serious illness, for example, you can't necessarily share that with a group of first graders that you are teaching. So you'll have to still put on a smile, still, do your job as the teacher in the classroom. But you need to be aware that this is something that you are doing, and this also is a form of exertion, that it can be taxing while you do it. So being aware of that is also can help you manage it better. And of course, who we engage with, who we connect with matters, because emotions is not about one person. And in a classroom, it's between you and the students. And there's also the audience effect. It's where if you're engaging with one other student, that there are 40 other eyes watching what you are doing with that student. So as teachers, we need to convey that we are listening to them, not just their words, but we are looking at them and we are open, and we are open to whatever they come and tell us. That we are not saying that you cannot say X, Y, Z to the teacher. So this is the hardest part of emotional intelligence, is to be able to regulate your emotions. We all feel, we can recognize, we even know what is causing the emotion, but to be able to regulate our emotions in a way that is socially appropriate and that is not detrimental to either our own health and well-being or to the relationships of the people we are connecting with. And in a classroom situations, how you regulate also impacts how the children learn to regulate their emotions. And we are all influenced by one another's emotions. If this was a workshop that's being conducted in a room, your emotions in the moment would impact me, and my emotional state will be impacting you. And this is, again, we lose this richness in an online webinar. So we all regulate in different forms. It could be as simple as this. You're grading papers and a colleague whom you don't like very much makes a comment that really bothers you, but you want to finish your grading. So instead of responding, you just take a deep breath and you just continue. That act of taking that breath and continuing is a form of regulation. Regulation, I don't want this word to be misinterpreted. It does not mean that you don't feel or that you're controlling your emotions and you're suppressing them. Neither does it mean that you're not having negative emotions. All it means is that you are able to contain it and respond in a way that is not harmful to either you or the people you are dealing with. So a few strategies for containing strong negative emotions. One is breathing. Okay, and yes, this is an age-old tradition and practice that we have, practiced in India for centuries. And only now the West has woken up to it. But doing some kind of mindfulness breathing exercise can go a long way in helping children and adults better regulate their emotions. Just the practice of doing it every day helps you take that deep breath when you need to, that one moment to pause. So Thich Nhat Hanh has a suggestion of a meditation strategy that you just take 4 breaths to calm down, and you tell yourselves in, out, as you inhale and exhale, deep, slow, calm, ease, smile, release. So even doing this in a classroom with students can help them calm down. And of course, it's good to do these activities not when they're the most energized and they're most anxious or most stressed out. But if it's done as a daily practice, it can be useful in those moments as well. So mindful breathing has immense benefits for emotional health, for physical health, and for mental well-being. Other ways to regulate your emotions: if you know that you're going to meet, you're going in for a stressful job interview, okay? You can tell yourself that after the interview, I will treat myself to an ice cream. And that helps you get through, okay, maybe not the job interview, but maybe even a dentist appointment. I think that example would be appropriate. You can also minimize your exposure to the irritant. For example, if it is a colleague who's very bothersome, who makes very negative and snide remarks to you, you can choose not to sit next to that colleague during lunch breaks. As far as possible, sit a few chairs away. So these are some ways that we can reduce our exposure to negative stimulants. We can also shift our attention away, do something that distracts us. Of course, this can be done when we are feeling a strong negative emotion. However, should not be a habit that you choose to do it to deny the negative emotion, that you don't choose to think of something unpleasant. But it's only when you're feeling highly stressed, till you calm down, you do something else, and then come back to deal with your problem when you are calmer and cooler. We also need to learn to reframe our interpretations of events. So many people are scared to speak in public, to give a speech, because you feel butterflies in your stomach, you feel tingly in your hands, you feel sweaty in your palms, your heart is racing. But if you tell yourself those are all symptoms of being excited, not necessarily anxious, you end up doing better when you have to speak in public. So it is the narratives, the stories we tell ourselves matter. Even the small change that we make can make a huge difference in terms of the outcome. So to be an emotional scientist, we need to check in with ourselves, our emotions, how we are feeling in the moment. Am I feeling calm, composed, and centered? And we should try not to impose those automatic thoughts that pop up into our head as the truth, and that we judge all the time. Stepping away from those judgments can help us have more healthy emotional interactions. And finally, the meta moment, okay? Because it's called meta moment because it's a moment about a moment. And this is again, it is meditative, and all it is stepping back from what is happening right now and viewing that chatter in your mind, all those thoughts and feelings, everything that's racing around, stepping back and viewing it as an outsider. Because this gives us a chance, one is to look at the situation more objectively, not to be too attached. It gives us that more objective distance. And then in that moment, to ask yourself, what would my best self do right now? Because we have all been in situations where we regretted doing something, when we lashed out in anger. I wish I hadn't said those hurtful words. I wish I didn't lose my cool. I wish I had just stepped back. I think this is universal. We've all experienced this. But the more we are able to have these meta moments, I think we create a world where there is more harmony, more peace. And, and in fact, this is so important that we teach children these skills so that we create the kind of future and the kind of society that we want them to grow into, that is peaceful, harmonious, stable. And that's what education should be about. We want children to become their best possible selves. And that's for each child to determine what is it for themselves. We don't determine, you be engineer, you be doctor. That's not what I mean by best possible self. But becoming the person that you are meant to be, most authentic to you, your interests, your passions, your personality, your strengths, your weaknesses, putting it all together. What is the best possible self I can grow into? We all have limitations. Not everyone can do what the other person is doing. But what can I do to be the best human being that I can? So again, pausing and engaging in meditative acts can help us cultivate these meta moments. And in addition to doing all of the above, a few more things we can do to have a richer and more positive emotional life. By positive, I don't mean that we banish all the negative, but a more healthy emotional life, perhaps I should say. We need to sleep adequately. We need to exercise. We need to practice gratitude, forgiveness, and of course, do mindful breathing. I will leave these here. I was going to show these, but I think we're running out of time. So I will pause right now. And thank you very much. And I hope we have some time for questions. Thank you.
Yes, as expected, we do have a few questions that have come in here and there. Not a few, quite a bit, but we'll try and address as much as possible. The first question that one of the teachers would like to ask you is how to handle the smaller children. While all these things are quite doable, maybe for the senior students, how do you handle the smaller kids?
I think the same principles apply whether it's a small or an older kid. Okay. We need to respect their emotions, what they are feeling. Even if they are little beings, they are beings. So we need to connect. They may not necessarily have the language skills, they may not have the sophisticated vocabulary of the older children to be able to precisely say what they are feeling. But that is why it becomes all the more important that teachers of younger children have to be more sophisticated emotional scientists, in fact, because they need to gauge what the child is feeling from their behavior and body language, because they may not have the language skills to express themselves adequately. So yes, the same principles apply. But you need to connect. You need to make them feel safe. You need to make them feel that they belong in your classroom, that it is a homely environment for them, that you are there to nurture and protect them. They should not, it's very important, especially for younger children, that they don't feel threatened, they don't feel scared. Whatever you can do to convey to them that this is your second home, that we are there to care for you and that we are there to connect with you.
Right. And with so much of over information that is available to kids nowadays, one of them asks us, how can we keep them away from the overwhelming world of social media? So,
I don't think we can necessarily keep them away from devices. But I think when it comes to social media, I think there's been a lot of research now that shows it's not good for the mental health of children and adolescents. So I think limiting social media usage to older teens is probably recommended. But if you don't have that control, but I think limiting the amount of time children spend on devices, okay, and that's not necessarily should come from a place of command and control, but again, it should come from a place of connection, and ensuring that a child is leading a rounded life where they get adequate sleep, they get adequate exercise, they get adequate time in the company of others without necessarily everyone being on their phone, because now even when they're with friends, each one is on their phone, where they're playing outside, or where they're engaging in some physical activity. If we ensure that all those needs are being met, yes, of course, we can't completely keep them from devices, because devices also has their benefits, but educating them and letting them know about the problems of devices and what they can do to us, including hampering with our self-esteem, and in fact, diminishing our self-worth. All this needs to be communicated to children. Again, it has to be based on their age levels, their developmental levels. It has to be tuned to that, letting them know about the dangers and the benefits of using being online. I think that should be definitely a part of emotional literacy as well, and digital literacy, that needs to be imparted to students.
maybe in the same connection, another teacher asks how to connect with the hostel students. So we've spoken about the younger kids. We're talking about explaining them the whys of not being on social media too much. How do you connect with hostel students and understand their emotions as a house teacher or a local parent in residential schools?
I think it's very extremely important in the context of a boarding school or a hostel, because you are the, the kind of the parent, local parent, and that it's not their second home, it is actually their home if they're residing in the school. So connecting with them and knowing all the students individually, having adequate spaces for them to approach you, and you also making that one-on-one connection with different students and watching them, not only when they are in your presence, but if you can also get a gauge of how they are engaging with each other by, even talking to students, who are your friends, finding out who they're hanging out with. What do you get to know that, certain students are the loners, they don't have friends, and then trying to get other students to engage with them. So yes, you need to be even more watchful. So what I said, you need to even, it's probably all the more relevant in the context of a hostel.
Hostel, true, true. And should these emotions be discussed in the class or with individuals privately? Because if you say individuals, then it takes a lot of time. So, how do they manage that? So, we have
The
two questions
emotions,
in one.
whether we like it or not, the emotions come into the classroom. Okay, they come in with the students. So it depends on the context. If it is, see, when you come into if you see one particular student is acting out, you may just connect, acknowledge that, that student is troubled, okay, without necessarily, and assuring the student that you can address it later after the class in a private space. Okay. But if it's the whole class is feeling upset because the excursion is cancelled for the, next day, then if you're giving the science test without even connecting with that fact, they're not going to do well on that science test. So first is to empathize. I understand that you are feeling upset. Not why are you feeling upset? Y'all are, eighth standard students. It's, immature. Y'all know now it'll be postponed to next week. I know you are disappointed. Just empathizing and agreeing with them, and sometimes it doesn't even involve agreeing. It just showing that you acknowledge and you heard them is all that it takes for students to feel that they have been given a hearing, and then they are more likely to engage with what you say, because unless you connect with them, they won't connect with you.
Absolutely. And that actually answers the next question, saying, what role does empathy play in fostering a strong teacher and student relationship? So,
Empathy should underline all interactions in the classroom, what you like and what you don't like as well. The very fact that you just acknowledge that they are feeling that way, even if you feel they shouldn't be feeling that way, but we should also learn that everybody has a right to feel however they feel. You can't control how you feel. You can control how you respond to that feeling, but nobody can tell me how to feel, and neither can you tell a child. So I think just acknowledging that can go a long way.
true. And then we have the next question saying, nowadays children speak a lot of lies to escape from silly mistakes. Most parents don't care about their children's mistakes. As teachers, how do we solve this problem?
Okay, firstly, I think we need to be a little careful about making these generalizations, because again, these are attributions we are making. Okay, as a class teacher, I think each case in that classroom, there's going to be a different story of what's going on in each child's life. Why the child is lying, what the child is lying about, we need to understand. There's probably some pressures. Nobody lies for no reason. Uh, is the child being pressured? Who is doing the pressuring? So these are things that we need to look into. Like a scientist, we need to get more information. Unless we have that data, unless we understand the broader context and the picture, and let's not assume we understand. Again, that's a mistake that we are making. Let us not assume that our interpretation of the story is the correct interpretation. Let's try to get that information from the student, from the parents, from the peers, before we try to solve this issue.
Right. And probably another generalized question, but still, often we come across students in 11th and 12th class who remain drowsy in class. How do we deal with such students?
Okay, drowsy is very likely lack of sleep. Lack of sleep, again, at that age, could be, again, I don't want to make assumptions, could be due to using devices at night, or it could be they're staying up studying and doing homework, given the kind of pressure that students at that age are on. So again, imparting the importance of sleep to students and to parents, that you want your child to do well, you need to ensure that they sleep for a minimum of 8 hours is the bare minimum. And actually at that age they should be getting at least 9. But if there are kids who are not even getting that, so that's why you're seeing the drowsiness. And unless you address that root problem, you're not going to solve the issue.
True. Because again, we're very beautifully connecting it to the next question, where they ask, how can teachers balance the need for academic rigor versus the need for students to address the children, the students' emotional well-being?
Well, the academic rigor, it becomes pointless unless the child is feeling centered, unless the child is emotionally stable. No amount of rigor is going to make a difference. So you as teachers, we have to prioritize what is more fundamental to our health, our physical health, our mental health. Only after that comes the academics, because unless this foundation is there, say for when I'm sick and I have fever, you're not going to make me run a marathon or even do a math test if I'm very ill. We respect that. Likewise, if we don't take care of our emotions, and you see this is happening, that there is this crisis of mental health where so many young people are succumbing to mental illness. And that's because we are not giving adequate importance to this very essential aspect of who we are.
Right. But then still, there is a very thin line of a difference. So a teacher asks how to differentiate between a learning difficulty or an emotional or behavioral issue. How to differentiate?
Sometimes you cannot, because they're interconnected. Okay. Learning and emotions are strongly intertwined. A learning difficulty could lead to an emotional issue. An emotional issue can lead to a learning difficulty. Okay, it goes both ways. It's bi-directional. And sometimes you cannot make out if it's chicken or egg, but you need to address both. You need to address both, possibly in parallel. But there should be a base of emotional stability before you're looking at the academic aspect.
True. So this is about communicating with the kids. And one teacher asked, how can we effectively communicate with parents to take this matter seriously? How how to tell them, how to educate them on understanding the emotional quotient and the emotional well-being of their child?
Well, if their child's emotional well-being is being jeopardized, their whole family life will fall apart. Okay. And they will know it. The relationships get frayed, and it starts at home. So the talking back, the shouting, the yelling. I don't think parents are necessarily blind to this. But I think as a society, what we are prioritizing as academic success as most important, I think we need to say that emotional health is as important. And I think
Yes.
that's a message that schools should also, once schools also emphasize it, I think parents will buy into it.
True. True. I think we had that much time for the questions, and I'd like to thank all the teachers for those enlightening questions, and of course you, ma'am, for the very, very enlightening session that you have taken. You provided such great practical strategies and thought provoking perspectives. So I know our educators will take away a great deal from this. Now I would like to invite Mr. Tyagarajan, the head of the Hindu Group School Vertical, who has been instrumental in all our efforts to connect with all of you and support the educational community in India. I now invite him to deliver the vote of thanks for today.
Thank you, Varsha. So thank you very much. Actually, it's a delightful day for us. Despite being a holiday, we have thousands of teachers participating in this online competition. So on behalf of the Hindu Group of Publications, my heartfelt thanks to all the teachers who have been the guiding factor and the guiding lights to the students. Thank you, teachers. Thank you very much. My sincere thanks to our speaker, Ms. Aruna Shankaranarayanan, for an excellent presentation. With her expertise giving more insights, and we are very grateful to you, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge. You being a teacher and faculty, you emphasized how a teacher can nurture and shape the young minds. Once again, thank you very much for your time, your knowledge, and your expertise. Thank you very much. I wish to place on record the support extended by our cross-function teams, marketing and editorial, for making this event a grand success. My gratitude to all our sales and distribution colleagues, the front-end team who regularly connect with the teachers, the school authorities, and the team working in the regional offices as well as at corporate for making this event a grand success. Thank you all. Thank you very much. So we will connect once again next month with a different topic. I'm sure that topic will really meet the requirement of the teachers in the current context. So happy holiday. Wishing you all a very happy and prosperous new year. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.